welcome. It's so good of you to brave the elements on this afternoon, and I'm delighted to be here with you. You know, when you pinched my good friend Rob Shea and took him away from Boston, it was a great loss for us, not only musical, but also intellectual and gustatory. And I was delighted to hear that you and Betsy and Katie were enjoying Mizzou, and I'm even more pleased now to be here and see and experience this welcoming place with friends of long standing. Ava and I we were kids together at Juilliard, and Ed and I were together decades ago. And then so many new friends whom I met today, not only esteemed colleagues among the faculty members, but also their excellent students and the remarkable ensembles. You have great talent here, and it reminds me that the university is a community of learners, and I'm so pleased to see such excellent students and such wonderful faculty members. One of the things we were working on this morning with the student groups, the first chorus actually, was musician jokes, because as you know, musician jokes are a wide genre. And if you Google musician jokes, you will eventually find your way to the MIT site that has more or less a canonic list of musician jokes. Yet they're wonderful. There's something on that to offend everyone. For instance, they say, how do you get two piccolos to play in tune? Well, you have to shoot one of them. And, well, goodness, for every voice part, there's something insulting. How many altos does it take to change a light bulb? Well, 5. 1 to change the bulb, and 4 to say, isn't that a little high for you, dear? Of course, the viola jokes go on for pages and pages, and I won't even bore you with another viola joke. But I was pleased with the bagpipe joke. Why do bagpipers walk around when they play? Well, to get away from the sound. But none is as rude as the conducting jokes. And they run along these lines. What's the ideal weight for a conductor? 6.2 ounces. That's not counting the funerary urn. What's the difference between a snake lying in the road and a conductor? Well, there's skid marks in front of the snake. But my favorite has to do with a young conductor, an assistant conductor. An assistant conductor is a mouse in training to become a rat. And he really wanted to know what was in the little book that his boss had in his pocket, because his boss would pull it out before every concert and look at it, and then he would stride on stage and bow to the audience and begin the piece. And the student was just sure that some great wisdom was contained in this book, and actually it was. One day he found out through a great misfortune, tragedy struck, and before the paramedics could get there, the kid had the book out that said, violins on the left, cellos on the right. I'm especially happy to be in the museum today. When I visited the room across the hall and saw so many of my old friends, I was reminded of Levine's book called Highbrow, Lowbrow, which tells us that 150, 200 years ago, most museums were like yours. Many reproductions. The Museum of Fine Arts in Boston had a collection of which it was proud. Tastes changed, and the reproductions were put away somewhere. But I'm delighted that so many of my old friends are accessible to the students. I think nothing does it justice. I quite like seeing it, the reproduction before you, the statuary. When I teach this course on the future of music, I try to impart a body of knowledge and give the students tools to work with, tools that include some repertoire, an understanding of music, history, philosophy, consciousness of the forces at work, a means of evaluating new developments, and a construct of possible models for the future of music. We use the framework something like, where are we now? How did we get here? And where are we headed? We discuss economic forces, social forces, critical forces, and generational forces. When I was an undergraduate, 45 years ago, the future of classical music looked rosy. First of all, the Ford Foundation had just funded for the Big Five, Boston, Cleveland, Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, the 52-week season. And so it was no longer necessary to drive an ice cream truck in the summertime to support yourself. The greatest musicians in the land could actually play 52 weeks a year together. And Danny Newman had put out a book called Subscribe Now, which was universally adapted among the orchestras. The subscription model was what we have followed with, until recently, great success. Now, American composers enjoyed esteem in our universities, and my remarks on the future of music would have centered entirely on compositional processes. If you think back to that time, Arnold Schoenberg had won not only the battle, but the war. Even Stravinsky was writing 12-tone music, as was Aaron Copland. And people who wrote melodic music, Rachmaninoff, Barber, Sibelius, Strauss, Britten, Bernstein, they were deemed marginal figures. Works of monumental complexity, works required 40 rehearsals, conferred bragging rights on the government-sponsored radio stations of Germany. Lincoln Center and the Sydney Opera House were in progress. Carnegie Hall had been saved from the wrecking ball, and ethnomusicology was a new field. Well, what happened since those halcyon days? Well, first, if we're going to ask the ethnomusicologists, let's figure out what they are. To musicologists and theorists, ethnomusicologists study everything else. To the ethnomusicologists themselves, they study all music in terms of the social and cultural context, embracing production, reception, and signification. So to begin understanding the situation we're currently in, let's ask them to look at what happened to music in the course of the 19th century, because so much of what we have and are was a gift to us from the 19th century.